Carbohydrates are only one of the 4 macromolecules. Protein is another. When people think of protein, they usually think of steak, or beans, or eggs, or tofu. Slightly fewer people think of Lady Gaga's meat dress. But what even fewer people realize is that proteins do everything in our cells. They provide structural support. They allow cells and organelles to move. They even allow whole organs like our muscles to move. They also transport oxygen around and through our blood. They make channels for materials to flow into and out of cells. Sometimes they even pump those substances in and out. They can be used to tag invading bacteria and viruses in our bodies. They can be used to receive and transmit signals across membranes. They can speed up chemical reactions, even the chemical reactions that made the very protein in the first place. Just like carbohydrates, though, proteins are simply polymers, one monomer linked to the next. The monomers of proteins are called amino acids, and here they are, all 20 of them. If you look closely, you can see that there are some new elements found inside proteins. Not only can you find carbons aplenty, and hydrogens, and oxygens, you can also find nitrogen, and very occasionally, you can even find sulfur. Each of these 20 amino acids has some chemical similarities. For example, they all have one central or alpha carbon right in the middle, and to one side they always have a nitrogen, and to the other side they always have a carbon. Nitrogen, carbon, nitrogen, carbon. The thing that changes are these large regions colored in pink. Some of them are very long and positively charged. Some of them are slightly shorter and uncharged. Others are shorter still and negatively charged. Each of these portions is called an R group. There are 20 different R groups, hence 20 amino acids. And as these amino acids get polymerized, that is, linked together into a polymer, the R groups interact in different ways that gives each protein its unique structure and function. So what does this actually look like? Let's take 2 amino acids. You can see their central carbons in gray. If you take the carbon end of one amino acid and you bring it nice and cozy with the nitrogen end of another amino acid, and you take a water molecule out, bam, you formed a bond between these 2 amino acids, and you've started to construct a protein. This baby protein is called a dipeptide, sort of like disaccharide, di meaning 2 because 2 amino acids have been joined together so far. And if you keep joining more amino acids on in this way, you start to form a very long chain. The long chain is called a polypeptide. Now, the polypeptide does not stay in a long chain. It's able to make these complex shapes because the R groups of each amino acid interact with each other. So if I were to zoom in on a portion of the protein, I might find some amino acids on the inside of the protein that are hydrophobic, and they hide here where they won't be in contact with water. There are other groups that form weak hydrogen bonds that will hold that portion of the protein together. And there are stronger bonds still that form inside proteins. For example, this covalent bond right here between 2 sulfur atoms, or even an ionic bond formed over here. These strong attractions hold this part of the protein together, allowing it to have a very complex shape. Proteins are able to serve all these different functions in our body because the order of amino acids and their shapes are unique. So some proteins are shaped like support beams. Some of them look like little arms designed for grabbing and pulling. Some have little pockets for transporting substances. Some are shaped like channels, and others like pumps. Some have sticky ends that grab onto invading bacteria. Others still have regions that are shaped like the receiver on a phone, ready to receive a signal and transmit a message into the middle of the cell. Some are shaped like the molecules they break apart, and some are shaped just right to build other proteins. So when you look at the diagram of a protein, keep in mind that the crazy shape is really just made from a long chain of specific amino acids that have been folded up upon one another. So how do our cells know how to make such complex proteins? Well, the code for all these proteins is stored in another family of macromolecules called nucleic acids. The most famous nucleic acid is DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA is found in the nucleus of each cell in our body, which earns this class of molecules their name nucleic acids, that is, found in the nucleus. So how is it that nucleic acids such as DNA store such complex information? In order for us to understand that, we need to look at their monomers. The monomers of nucleic acids are called nucleotides, and here's a picture of one of those 4 nucleotides. As you now know, the corners in most of these molecules are occupied by carbon atoms that bond with 4 other atoms. But nucleotides also contain 2 other elements that we see more rarely, nitrogen and phosphorus. And all 4 of these nucleotides contain all 5 of these elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. The arrangements of atoms on the blue region indicated here of the molecule are the same no matter which nucleotide you're looking at. However, over on the right, the arrangement of atoms is different each time. Each of these arrangements of atoms acts as a letter in a 4-letter alphabet that spells the code for all of the proteins in your body. The letters can attract to each other by forming hydrogen bonds, which allows 2 strands of DNA to assume a double helix shape, the A's being attached to the T's, the C's being attracted to the G's. In this way, the code is stored safely and stably in the middle of the double helix. DNA is not the only category of nucleic acid. Its cousin RNA is also used to read the genes encoded in this alphabet. But yes, our genes are segments of these molecules. Our own traits are coded for by the sequence of monomers inside this very special polymer.